We're continuing to follow breaking news out of Minneapolis, where a 37-year-old U.S. citizen was shot and killed by federal agents. We're following the very latest on this developing situation right here on KARE 11 and streaming on KARE 11 Plus. So thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Morgan Wolf.
And I'm Rena Sargentopoulos. Protesters have been at the scene since the shooting was first reported this morning. And
this happened exactly right here around 9 a.m. near the intersection of Nicollet Avenue and 26th Street in Minneapolis. This is the Whittier neighborhood along Each Street that many of you might recognize.
We do have multiple crews covering the developing situation right now. We are going to start with Lou Raguse, who is in the newsroom now, with more on what led up to the deadly shooting. Lou?
Rena and Morgan, Alex Priddy was a 37-year-old Minneapolis man who was in the vicinity of 26th Street and Nicollet Avenue where ICE agents were present. One bystander video seems to show Priddy filming in the middle of the street, then trying to pick up a woman who got pushed down. From there, Priddy gets sprayed by an agent, and another video then shows a group of agents restraining Priddy, then an agent firing a number of shots. Later, Homeland Security officials released a photo of a handgun along with 2 magazines they say Priddy had on him. Now here's where the story from federal officials differs from the many video angles that we have seen. In their words, Priddy approached with a gun and they attempted to disarm him, leading to the shooting. Well, Minneapolis Chief Brian O'Hara told us that Priddy had a license to carry a gun. We've seen no video that shows him pull out his gun or reach for his gun, and some video even suggests that one agent removed a gun prior to the shooting. The Department of Homeland Security, HSI, is leading the investigation and has shut out state use of force investigators. What's remarkable about that is that according to the BCA, they had a search warrant signed by a judge to get into the public area where the shooting happened, but federal agents still turned them away. Our Kent Erdahl will have more on that in just a little bit. For now, back to you.
All right, thanks, Lou. Well, at this hour, protesters continue to gather where Priddy was shot and killed. Ian Russell joining us live in South Minneapolis. Ian, what is the crowd like right now?
Well, it looks like it's almost kind of split between two groups, one which is a little bit further down Nicollet this way, and then the one that's directly behind us. That intersection right there is 27th and Nicollet, and down this way is 27th and First. That's where we spent the majority of the morning while those ICE agents and Homeland Security were still out here before they left. And I want to tell you about what that looked like as they left. It looked like tear gas being thrown from the back of cars, obviously a lot of emotions, a lot of people yelling at them, but we did stop and talk before that happened with a man. I believe his name was Christopher, and if I get your name wrong, I apologize, sir. It's been a long day out here. But talking to him, he says he's an ex-Army Ranger. He talked about his experience overseas and why he wanted to come out here today. He said he wanted to come out here to speak to people, to see things for himself, call for accountability, and things like that. He talked about, his experience working overseas and what would have happened if his guys were involved in something like this. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We've been peaceful, and now this morning it was just unbelievable. I can't believe that video. If my guys did that and we were in the military and we were trying to, let's say, subdue a civilian in Afghanistan, and all of a sudden my guys just shot and then started shooting, there would be a court-martial and there'd be accountability immediately.
Now, obviously, during that moment when we spoke to him, it was very intense. People were upset. They were yelling at these Homeland Security agents while they stood there. That we saw tear gas being thrown and pepper balls and things of that nature. Throughout the day, things have calmed down. The emotion is still there for a lot of people. We saw these rallies that happened earlier in the afternoon. Now, though, it has calmed down. It is quiet. People are walking. We're standing in the middle of Nicollet right now. People are walking up and down the street, talking with each other, sharing their thoughts, their emotions. But overall, a much more peaceful moment than it was earlier this morning, guys.
All right, Ian, and the weather obviously not stopping anybody from coming out today.
Yeah, very cold day. Community members are now saying that they were frustrated, though, and heartbroken. Tonight, they are demanding that federal agents leave Minnesota. Our Raya Katene is live and has more of their reaction. Raya?
Well, for most of the day, you guys, people have been gathered out here at this intersection, 26th Street and Nicollet. And you can see behind me this barricade of dumpsters and garbage cans is still out there. But now most of the crowd has actually moved about 100 feet or so to kind of the middle of Nicollet. This is where most of the crowd is now standing in unity, in solidarity. It's much more quiet at this point. And people have described this to me as much more of a vigil because it's much closer to where the shooting actually happened. happened. And off to the right-hand side is Glam Doll Donuts. This is one of the businesses on this stretch of Nicollet known as Eat Street that has now opened its doors, not for business, but just to simply let people in, come inside for a moment or two to warm up. They have things like hot coffee, hot water, some hand warmers. And I've spoken to a number of protesters who are out here today, and they tell me they are extremely frustrated and angry that we are once again at this point where they say, you know, another Minnesotan has died at the hands of a federal agent. They tell me that they want to keep things peaceful out here. That is why they are out here, and they say they will remain out here for as long as it takes until ICE gets out of Minnesota and they see the change that they want to see. At this point in time, I do not see any sort of police presence out here, whether that be federal agents or local agencies. All we see is a large crowd of people. Now we can hear a little bit more vocally some of the sounds that they're making. Earlier it was a lot of chanting and such, and now it has gotten a lot more quiet. But every now and then there is a chant that will kind of erupt, and again, more people just kind of milling around and showing up here on Nicollet.
Mariah, we know you just mentioned that you don't see any local or federal law enforcement on the scene. We do know that Mayor Fry has asked for the National Guard's help, and we do know that Chief O'Hara has said that they are going to set up a vehicle exclusionary zone where you are tonight, and that there would be both Minneapolis police officers and National Guardsmen wearing yellow vests that would be policing the area to make sure that the protest stayed safe. You have not seen any of those people show up on the scene, and if you do, will you please let us know?
Rena, you were cutting out there for a little bit, so I'm not sure I'm completely understanding your question, but if you're asking, you know, you've mentioned that we've heard from local officials that they say they will be here and setting up sort of a perimeter, whatever that may look like, using the National Guard resources. I have not seen that at this point in time.
All right, Raya, thank you.
Tonight, we are learning more about Alex Preddy, the man who was shot and killed this morning by federal agents. KARE 11 investigative reporter AJ Legault joining us now. I understand that you went to his neighborhood. You spoke to some people who knew him. They are just entirely shocked by this.
Yeah, Morgan, this afternoon I went out to the Lyndale neighborhood. That's where the 37-year-old, his name's Alex Preddy, as we've been reporting, that's where he lived. He owned a condo there. His neighbors actually let out screams when they learned that he was the man they had been watching on these social media be killed.
Who knew him?
Neighbors welcomed me and a handful of other journalists out of the cold and into their home.
I talk to Alex every time he's out walking his dog.
Really?
He lives right there.
Jeannie Weiner had seen the video of the federal agents shooting Alex Preddy, but had not yet put two and two together.
So I didn't know that was our Alex.
Our Alex, she said. Our neighbor.
That's how crazy it's gotten. That it's just getting way too close. That now it's just right here. That people that I know, good people, are being shot. And I don't think he was a threat to anybody. I don't think that he was a threat to anyone.
I live across the street and up a couple houses from Alex.
Holly Reckel is the president of the Lyndale Neighborhood Association.
I'm kind of shocked. I mean, just as I learned that it was my neighbor, I was watching the videos that seemed like he wasn't a violent threat. So, and I'm shocked that this happened, actually.
Oh my gosh. All I know is that he's been a good neighbor. I talk to him over the fence all the time. He walks his dog. He's a registered nurse. I don't know what else to say. It's senseless.
The neighbors I spoke with were surprised that Alex was even at the scene of a protest. Now, his father told the Associated Press that Alex had participated in protests following the killing of Renee Good, and they'd had conversations about him not engaging or doing anything stupid. We've learned Alex was an ICU nurse who had even worked for the federal government at the Department of Veterans Affairs, where he certainly would have been subjected to in-depth background checks. We know he had a permit to legally carry a firearm, but guys, it's really striking that this man whose job had been to care for our nation's veterans is someone the federal government's now trying to spin as a domestic terrorist.
And obviously, from the videos we've seen, was trying to care for someone on the scene at the time. So, and it must be shocking for people when I know you hate to be the one to deliver bad news, but when you go to the door and someone hears that someone that they know is involved in something like this, I can only imagine it was.
They're certainly going, wait a minute, you mean Alex? Alex upstairs, Alex?
Yeah.
That was the response, and then you just heard, oh, it was bad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our hearts go out to them. Thanks, AJ. Many people witnessed this morning's shooting. Jessica Hart heard from people who say that they were the first ones on the scene, and she joins us live now with what they saw.
Yeah, we talked with her hours ago, just shortly after that shooting, and she was very emotional, and she came down here to be with the people. And when I say here, this is where we're at. We're at 27th and Nicollet. There's a small group of protesters still here. The woman we talked with has since gone home for the night, but they built a pretty big barricade filled with wood pallets, dumpsters, chairs, and tables that look like they're from restaurants. Now they have some firewood also over here as well. They have a small fire going, so that's kind of where the small group is congregating. But the woman I spoke with this morning, she said it was really important for her to stay in the area after it happened, to be with the community. This is what she said she saw.
So I'm crossing 27th and I hear gunshots, and a lady came running down the street and grabbed me and hugged me, and they tear gassed her. And I looked down the street, I went down the street, and he was laying in the street. He was laying at the bus stop, and there was no chance because there were so many holes in blood. And I think it's wrong. I hope he wasn't scared, and I hope he went to heaven right away.
Now, we haven't seen any sort of law enforcement since they left this intersection several hours ago, but we do see some off in the distance. It's very hard to tell from this distance. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it. We do see some Minneapolis police squad car lights down there. I believe that is 28th in Nicollet down there, but they're still kind of keeping a ways back. But as you see, no one's really able to get through here because of the barricades that these protesters have built. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Jessica.
Right now, the Department of Homeland Security is giving its account of the second fatal Minneapolis shooting by a federal agent amid the unrelenting ICE surge. Lauren Lemanchek joining us now with that. What did Secretary Noem have to say, Lauren?
Well, Rena, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said agents acted in self-defense. She went on to criticize Governor Walz, blaming him and local officials' rhetoric and those resisting ICE agents for the killing. Here's how she said the encounter with Alex Preddy unfolded.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
Now, notably, when asked if there is any evidence Preddy brandished his weapon or threatened agents with it, neither Noem nor Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino said that he did. And that appears to be what several viral videos show of the shooting. Our Chris Rapsky has been monitoring those and has a breakdown of those videos.
From this video, you can see Preddy holding a phone up and directing a car through traffic. Moments later, a woman says something to a federal agent and is shoved to the ground. Preddy touches the agent's arm and holds his own arm up in defense as an agent sprays Preddy's face. Preddy is sprayed again, pushed, and then pulled off the woman as he clings to the woman's backpack. Preddy is taken to the ground. On his knees, he appears to resist detainment. From another angle, you see a man in a gray coat with nothing in his right hand walk around Preddy and reach toward his belt area. Seconds later, you can see a gun in that man's right hand being taken away from the scrum. Back to the other angle.
Shoot. Okay, there was another 2 other angles there that we wanted to show you, specifically at the end, right before Preddy is shot on the ground. There is one agent who takes the gun out of a holster. It's unclear where the first shot is fired. But what I can tell you is there is no camera angle that we have seen that shows Preddy holding a gun or taking his own gun out of his waistband or holster at any point during that video. That one officer we showed you looked like he took something out of Preddy's waistband and walked away with it. So a lot of this is unclear at this point. There's also another camera angle that we didn't show you guys because Preddy has already been shot and he is lying on the side of the street there. But one of the agents who is trying to issue aid to him, who is trying to help him, says, "Where is the gun?" And he sort of rolls Preddy over a little bit and somebody says, "The gun is over there," meaning somebody had already taken it away. So we just wanted to make sure that we showed you the evidence as you can see it on social media and as we can verify it frame by frame so far, guys.
Thanks, Chris. We presented some of this evidence to some of our use of force experts. I've been speaking with them throughout the day. A former FBI agent told me based on the scrum that he saw, he knows that these situations happen quickly. And he said that officers have a split second to react. Tonight, another one of our use of force experts added his thoughts.
Not uncommon or unusual for a officer to perceive one thing or to perceive that there's an immediate threat to his safety or life, despite what the videos may depict. Because all we have right now is a lot of unknowns. We all understand that.
Now, just within the last hour, we did hear from local leaders again who officially requested the Minnesota National Guard's help to reinforce local law enforcement in Minneapolis.
In that news conference, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says he will also formally ask a judge to rule on a temporary restraining order in an effort to halt federal operations in the city. And one question from a reporter sparked a sharp response from Frey and Senator Amy Klobuchar. Would the Trump administration actually follow a court order if a restraining order is granted? And here is how Mayor Frey responded.
The question is, will this administration abide by a court order? These are the underpinnings of our democracy, of our republic, and of this Constitution. The answer better be yes. Whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, you abide by those court orders. The answer.
Governor Walz and other state leaders also reacting to today's shooting, many firmly pushing back at the federal government's account of what happened. Kent Erdahl joins us with what they had to say. Kent?
Yeah, Governor Walz took the podium here at the Emergency Operations Center about 1:30 this afternoon. After that, we also heard from the superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Drew Evans, and I want to start there because we were just talking about the legal process, and the superintendent said that they had a judicial warrant to try to enter this crime scene and begin an investigation, which they would typically do under any normal circumstance, investigating this officer-involved shooting in Minneapolis. But he said we are now in uncharted territory because of what they encountered when they arrived. Take a listen.
I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sickening. But I have a strong statement here for our federal government. Minnesota's justice system will have the last word on this. It must have the last word. As I told the White House in no uncertain terms this morning, the federal government cannot be trusted to lead this investigation. The state will handle it, period.
Okay, that was Governor Walz who spoke earlier, and he was talking about trying to establish that investigation. But again, Drew Evans, the superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, got up about an hour later to describe what they've encountered already when it comes to this investigation. In fact, from the very beginning, and I want you to listen to what he said.
When our team arrived, they were blocked by federal agents with the Department of Homeland Security from accessing the scene. We worked with them and were in contact with the FBI, trying to attempt to access the scene so we can gather evidence to understand what occurred and work through this process. Our team also secured a search warrant for the scene, which is an unusual move in a public area like that, but we did that attempting to have judicial approval to enter this scene to gather evidence. We were once again blocked by federal authorities to go in and do that scene examination.
Again, that is Drew Evans, who would typically be leading one of these investigations on behalf of the BCA in Minnesota. And again, he's called this uncharted territory. There's simply no precedent in his 20 years or anything that he's heard from around the country when it comes to what's going on right now with the federal government saying they've got it. He said he tried to reach out to DHS to talk to them to find out if they're establishing some kind of new standard. He said that would be, in theory, fine if they could communicate that. He said they haven't even answered his calls. So instead, he and the governor are calling on others to submit video and to do what they can to preserve any kind of evidence and have any kind of investigation, which is extremely difficult at this point. Now, one thing that they talked about after these news conferences on Background was with the National Guard and the call-up that we've had, because it concerns what's going on around that scene. We had a discussion with some members of the National Guard about what we'll be seeing in that area for members of the public in Minneapolis and what you can expect to see from the National Guard. They said again, and they reiterated what Minneapolis police said, in that they will be wearing high visibility vests and they will be largely limited to that area around the shooting and that zone that they're trying to keep traffic away from, largely doing traffic control and supporting Minneapolis police. There's one other mission that the National Guard will be part of, and that is securing the Whipple building. And I'll turn that back over to you because I think we'll have more information on that coming right up.
Ken, I just want to have one point of clarification here. At the very least, the FBI would normally be investigating this, but Drew Evans said that's not the case. It would be DHS itself investigating?
Again, he was told, and as we've heard, DHS says they are investigating. That's essentially all he knows because, again, he said he's reached out to try to talk to who he thought was the lead investigator, and he has not heard anything.
All right, Kent, thank you.
Well, as you just heard there, Kent briefly mentioned, the National Guard is mobilizing at the Whipple building in Minneapolis at the request of Minneapolis and Hennepin County leaders. Our Megan McPherson is live there now, joining us with the details. Megan?
Yeah, hey guys, we have seen that presence from the National Guard out here at the Whipple building this evening, and you can see it right here behind me. Photojournalist Jenny's gonna zoom in here so you can get a look, but we know that Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said that in order to distinguish themselves from ICE agents, these National Guard members are wearing those orange reflective neon vests, again, in order to distinguish themselves, and I do see one of those members right there. And we also know that the National Guard is mobilizing to help support local law enforcement because they received that request from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office earlier today, and I do see some vehicles here from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. So there is certainly a presence from local law enforcement here. And as far as what we're seeing out here in terms of the protest situation at the Whipple building this evening, it is obviously very cold. There has been a solid, steady group here, and I actually had one protester just a little bit ago talk to me about how throughout the day there have been several people being released from ICE custody. It's not clear exactly, why they were detained, but we have seen several people coming out without their coats on, coming out into the cold, into the elements. Actually, right now I'm seeing a National Guard member bring out one of those people who was being released from detainment, and I just saw her hug somebody here. So that is what we have seen out here really in just the last 30 minutes that we have been here on the scene here at the Whipple building. But things here are calm. Actually, a lot of the people that have gathered here are supporting one another with food, drinks, warm, really anything to keep each other warm, and people also going back to their cars and then coming back out here this evening. But from what I have seen, all things seem to be peaceful out here. Morgan, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Megan.